Hello everyone, my name's Daniel and I'm a programmer and an artist, and it's been a little while since I've made a video because I've been busy on a number of different projects which hopefully I'll be able to share soon. But just over a week ago, Blender released 4.3, and since then I've been updating all of my tools, trying to make sure everything's still working properly, fix a few bugs, add a few new features, and today I'd like to go over those new features and show what updates I've made. Also, today is the first day of Blender Market's cyber sale, and all of my products are 30% off over there. So that sale's from November 29th through December 3rd. So if you're interested in my tools, if you have them wishlisted, something like that, now would be a great time to get them because they are on sale. All right, I'm going to go over the new features. In terranode, I fixed a bug in the cliff modifier that was causing weird spikes to appear on some of the rocks it would make, especially if it was creating larger chunks, if you had a large strata size or something. So that shouldn't happen anymore. Then I added a new dunes modifier that works a lot like the noise modifier, but instead of picking a noise type that's sort of evenly spread out, it creates wave-like patterns. So you have options for the strength. It essentially applies a height map to the terrain. But as strength, it's some different masks for having it only appear in flat or steep areas or at certain elevations. So you can preview those masks, and then you can choose how far apart the dunes or the waves of the texture are, and how distorted or straight they are. A few different things like that. You can rotate the whole pattern, and it will tile perfectly with adjacent terrain pieces. So you can make large-scale terrains with tiles if you want to do that. Then for strands, I added a couple of new things. I added a new to ribbon modifier. It creates thin, flat geometry. You can either have it be solid, where you can choose a thickness, or you can have it be just a single plane, or one-sided plane, or a double-sided, which also uses that same thickness value. So double-sided could be good if you're ignoring the back faces and you want. Anyway, this could be used for caution tape, or for flat shoelaces, or for actual ribbons, tape, I don't know, all sorts of things probably. It is a little tricky. It's the only strands modifier that uses the tilt or the twist from the input curve, or really considers twist at all, because all the other ones are roughly cylindric. The radius is equal in all directions around the normal of, or the tangent of the curve. The to ribbon modifier does use the normal or the tilt value from the input curve. So it works fine if you put it on an actual like Bezier curve. If you're trying to use it with the sag modifier or any of the other, the knot tightener modifier, I think most of those are going to delete any tilt information that's on a curve to begin with. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but there's no way to really reconstruct it or know what the right tilt would be. Anyway, there's a couple of options to solve that. One is you can make it vertical. It's going to adjust the normal of the curve to always point up, straight up in the sky. That could work pretty well for like caution tape hanging between two poles or something. And you can also make it horizontal. If I think of some ways to transfer that from something, I may update this in the future, but just be aware that's a limitation. It's the only modifier that cares about tilt in the strands thing. So the other thing I added was a new material. It's a sort of plasticky material. You can see it here. It has a couple of different sort of texture patterns. This like dotted one, ribbons running along it, just flat, and then ribbons running across it. And the idea was for making sort of like computer cables, coated wire cables. But yeah, plastic covered wires was sort of the idea behind what that material would be for. But so 4 different texture patterns. It's all customizable with the attributes, just like all of the other ones. You can change the colors in the modifier, and it'll apply that in the shader. So that is a new option there as well. Then for my geometry node assets, I improved the deform match curve modifier so that it could use collections. Previously, you could array an object along the curve. Now you can array either an object or some objects from a collection along the curves. If you choose a collection, so here I have this collection of stones that I've selected, then it gives you options for how that collection is used. You can either array each of the objects randomly along the length of the curve, like is being done here, or you can pick a random object per spline. So if I had more curves in here, let's see, each spline is picking a different object, but then the same object is being used along that whole spline. And then you can also have it be sequential, where it will use all of the objects in the collection, but add them one by one to the array in order, so it would be a pattern that repeats. And then you can also do sequential on the spline, where it's going to use the same object along the whole spline, but each successive spline in the curve will be given a different object. So a couple different ways to use that. It's a feature I've been wanting to get in there for a while. Then there are a few minor changes, but the other main one was I tried to add gizmos to a bunch of the modifiers, which is a new feature in 4.3 that gives you controls in the viewport that let you change parameters like the offset value in the viewport. I ended up not adding them to as many of the modifiers as I planned on because they have some limitations. But I added them to the modifiers I thought it made sense, where I liked how they worked pretty well. So it's on a bunch of the array modifiers, it's on some of the curve modifiers, it's on the fence modifiers, but ones like deform match curve, anything where there's a bunch of copies of stuff, you can only put the gizmos on one. You have to sample one of the curves essentially to show the gizmo, and that sort of limits how useful it is because and it also makes any value you attach a gizmo to becomes a static value. It only has one value. You can't use a field or an attribute to supply the values for that property. So that really limits how you can use it as well. Anyway, because of that, I added it to some of the modifiers like the arrays that you will probably be using less often with dynamic values, but I didn't add it to as many of the modifiers as I wanted to. But when it does work, it's pretty cool. You can adjust things like the dash length, how much it's trimmed, and do it all in the viewport, which is pretty cool. For the array here, you can change how many items are in the array and move the last object in the array, which is pretty cool because say I wanted it to go to exactly this grid column. Well, it's not that hard to do with the property, but it's sort of cool just to be able to move the last item exactly where you want it and place it precisely. So anyway, those were the main features that I added to my geometry node libraries across all three of them. Like I said, they're on sale right now over on Blender Market, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and check it out. If you want to know more about the libraries as a whole, all of the different modifiers that are included and what all they can do, please check out my website. There's I have documentation on there about all of the three different libraries, the geometry node assets, the terranode, and the strands. And then I also have a Discord server, and you're welcome to join there and ask if you have any questions. The link for that is also in the description. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks for watching.